Few names make people feel as strongly as those of some Bible queens. People remember some for being smart and others for having faith, but some stand out for something deeper, a kind of power that has been around for hundreds of years and has made it hard to tell the difference between sin and survival, devotion and dominance. Why did they make the choices they did? Are they driven by blind ambition or by a desire to fight a system that will never let them be in charge? Why are these crowned women always presented as bad people in old stories? Were they really filled with evil? Or were they like chess pieces on a board where any move was a threat because the rules were made by people? Is it possible that when we read these stories again, we find mistakes as well as echoes of a lonely fight for space, voice, and permanence? Alliances between nations formed the futures of countries during the most troubled times in the histories of Israel and Judah. Marriages were more than just agreements to get married. They were also political plans that included military, economic, and spiritual goals. In these unions, women played important parts that go beyond what the records show. One of these people stood out with cruel force and a mark that would last forever: Jezebel, the woman whose name became a symbol of insult and worship. Jezebel came from a powerful family from another country. Her father was Ethbaal, king of the Sidonians, a people who worshipped gods like Baal and Asherah. Not only did she carry the name and traditions of her people, but also a spirit of leadership, strength, and belief. She didn't change who she was when she married Ahab, king of the northern kingdom of Israel. She actually strengthened her presence and ideals in a place that didn't agree with her views. The leaders of the God of Israel, on the other hand, saw this action as an insult. Not only did Jezebel affect big changes in religion, she also made them stick. She made worship of Baal the official religion, gave palace resources to its preachers, and built altars that directly criticized Yahweh's oneness as the God. People who follow the rules thought this was treason. For her, it was about staying true to her roots. But what she did wasn't just in the spiritual world. Jezebel was good at politics, had a say in what the government did, and could speak clearly. Naboth's death was one of the most shocking events in her life. It was planned so that Ahab could take his farm. Jezebel used the kingdom's own court system to make up charges and get someone convicted. Even though it was mean, it also showed that she was in charge, which was very unusual for a woman at the time. In later stories, the person that was seen as evil was actually a woman who knew a lot about how political and religious power works. The most famous fight of the time happened because of what she did: the spiritual battle on Mount Carmel. In front of everyone, Elijah dared the preachers of Baal, who were backed by Jezebel, to a public test to see who would call down fire from heaven. Not only was the win of the God of Israel a holy victory, but it was also the start of the end for the Phoenician queen's statue. Because of this event, Jezebel became very angry at Elijah. He ran away for his life after she swore to kill him. The conflict between them is more than just a fight between two people. It's the meeting of two spiritual systems, two worldviews that can't be reconciled. Jezebel didn't give up or keep quiet. She argued, begged, was punished, and fought back. She was everything that people didn't think a woman on the throne of Israel would be. But if we look beyond the Bible and try to understand the customs, limits, and situations of that time, we could also see in Jezebel the traits of someone who wouldn't follow a religion that wasn't hers, and a people who didn't accept her. Even though her voice was angry, it could also be seen as a plea for stability in a place that wanted to shut her up from the start. This is why Jezebel became a type. A few hundred years later, her name would be used in Revelation to call out another woman who was thought to be mentally bad. She wasn't just a person, she was a sign of turning away from God, being seduced, and having a bad effect. This connection, which holds a lot of meaning, takes away from the subtleties of her story and supports a pattern. Strong women who lead on their own are almost always seen as a threat to what is holy. The question that still needs to be answered is why their actions are treated so harshly, even when compared to those of cruel gods. Why does Solomon's worship of idols get better with age, but Jezebel's is used to judge everyone else? There may be an unfair judgment in the way the story has been told. Jezebel wasn't by herself. Athaliah, Michal, and even Solomon's foreign wives were seen as bad queens because they broke the rules. But maybe none of them left a mark that will last as long as she did, not because she is nice, but because she is strong. So the scribes thought that women with power were even more dangerous than any pagan altar. When we look back at her life, we can't help but notice the strain between being the main character and being punished. Jezebel was brave enough to be more than just a showy queen. She led, inspired, and fought. And that's exactly why she was so cruelly killed. She died horribly. She was thrown out of a window, horses stepped on her, and dogs tore her body apart. A result that reads more like a sentence than a piece of history. If anything, her story should be seen as more than just a spiritual warning. It should also be seen as a reminder of a time when women's power was seen as a secret that had to be hidden with violence. Even though she was bad, Jezebel was also a product of her time. She was an uncomfortable reminder of how much people remembered the Bible because they were afraid of women in power. Before we go on, I want to put out a special call to you. If what you're reading is already touching your heart, please help us keep spreading these facts that people forget. Please like this video and share it with someone who needs to think about how they use power. Also, please subscribe to our channel so you don't miss the next shows. Also, feel free to say in the comments, the truth can never be silenced. We hope to see you taking part with us. Also, please leave us super thanks if you want to help this work. We can keep telling more Bible stories and spreading this message of faith and hope thanks to your gift. Thank you so much for your help. We'll keep going on our journey today. When we think about these controversial historical people again, we are asked to see more than what we see when we criticize them. People who do horrible things and have bad attitudes often have forgotten situations, cultural traumas, and fights to stay alive that aren't thought about. The story of Jezebel is one that needs to be looked at more closely, not to make snap judgments, but to learn more about the religious and political forces that shaped the old world. Most importantly, Jezebel was a woman who lived in a place where women's views were never really heard on their own. Not only was she powerful in politics, but she was also symbolic, difficult, and shocking. She was brave enough to not only play the game, but also make the rules, while sitting on a chair made of deals between clans, bloodlines, and rival gods. And in the process, she became the focus of later religious memory, which turned her into a model of mistake and forbidden love. Once she was in charge with Ahab, Jezebel worked hard to make her power stronger with her own symbols. She had symbols in her hands that were not related to the royal family. On one side was a scepter or staff that stood for the power to rule, and on the other was a stick with leaves on it, which could have been a reference to lightning or fertility, two of the main qualities of Baal, the god she served. Every move she made and every outfit she wore showed the world how strong, religious, and intimidating she was. But it wasn't just how they looked. Law and worship held a lot of power for Jezebel, so she pushed hard for people in Israel to follow Baal because she affected him. Ahab not only put up with this movement, he even took part in it. At first it was just a political marriage, but soon it turned into a spiritual change that got rid of prophets of the Lord, replaced shrines, and promoted foreign priests. It was more than just mixing different religions. It was a total attack on the country's religious systems. Jezebel became the real leader behind the scenes by using a mix of force, charm, and negotiation. She knew how important it was to look stable, but she wasn't afraid to use tactics to stay in charge. In the Bible, the story of Naboth is like an open wound. The king wanted his farm in Jezreel, which was close to the castle. Naboth wouldn't sell it because he was afraid of God and wanted to follow custom. Then Jezebel made up a fake charge, swayed the local authorities, and made sure the innocent man was put to death. All of this was done to make her husband happy and to show that she was a queen who would not be questioned. This episode shows how ready she is to give up anyone for her goals, but it also criticizes Ahab for being quiet and letting his wife's actions happen while he watched and loved the results. She was the one who led. She was the one who made it happen. The prophets saw her as the one who went where even kings were afraid to go. The kingdom's moral decline got so bad that it was scary. The monotheistic heritage was shaken, the laws were broken, and good people were put down. It wasn't a secret that Jezebel didn't like the preachers of the Lord. Some of them were killed by her, and she was mean to Elijah after he won on Mount Carmel. She was the storm that hung over the kingdom and the ongoing danger that put Yahweh's name in danger. But over time, the foundations she helped build started to fall apart. Ahab was killed by an arrow during a fight at Ramoth-Gilead. This was the first sign that things were about to fall apart. Dogs did lick his blood in the same place where Naboth was killed, just as the prophet said they would. This was the start of the royal house's decline. But Jezebel did not bow down. She got ready for the end with the same pride that had been with her whole life. Years after Ahab died, Jehu was crowned king and went to Jezreel to get rid of the family of the dead king. While he was there, Jezebel dressed up, painted her eyes, and watched from the window. She knew what was going to happen. But she chose to face her fate with pride and disrespect instead of prayer or turning away from her sins. Her death was sad and important. As Elijah had said would happen, her slaves threw her out of the window, and horses and dogs stomped on and ate her body. From what the story says, God's sentence was carried out perfectly. But why is there so much hate? Why is the penalty so harsh? What Jezebel stood for might hold the key to the answer. She wasn't just a bad person. She stood for leaving the faith, corrupting prayer, and turning things around. It's also possible to see how afraid people in a theocratic society were of a woman who tried to rule. She broke the law in two ways, spiritually and socially. She went against both the God of Israel and the part that women are supposed to play. Through this process, her body became associated with everything horrible. The idea of what she did was passed down with disgust. In the letter to the church of Thyatira in the book of Revelation, a fake prophetess is called Jezebel. This shows that her name is still used as a spiritual warning after all these years. But behind the damnation for all time is a woman who knew how to use power in a dangerous setting better than most. And maybe that's why she made so many people afraid. No matter how harshly her story was criticized, it still makes people think about the lines between faith, power, identity, and judgment. Inside the walls of the house of Jezreel, Ahab's quiet told more than any sound. The king of Israel was in terrible pain just from hearing a regular person say no. There was more to Naboth's grapevine than just a plot of land. It was a picture of a system based on ancient justice, family history, and holy limits. It was something that no amount of royal gold could buy. Based on God's commands, Israel's rules said that land that was passed down from generation to generation could not be forever sold. They were holy to the tribes and saw them as a way to connect with the God who gave them the land. Naboth didn't say no without thinking about it. He only stayed true to the vow and did what the commander told him to do, but his loyalty would be what killed him. Ahab fell into silent depression because he was so angry. He shut himself off from everyone else, refused to eat, and turned his back on the world. Seeing him like that made Jezebel decide to do something, not because they care, but because it's easier that way. There should have been a king in the country, not a man hiding behind curtains. There was no way she would let a refusal hurt the crown's reputation. She came up with a cold and precise plan right away. She made fake government letters in Ahab's name using his royal seal. She told the chiefs and leaders of Jezreel to set up a fake trial with these words. Naboth was going to be charged with 2 murderous crimes, blasphemy against God and betraying the king. That was enough for the decision to be sealed, and Jezebel provided the false witnesses. Within the rules she had shaped, it was a legal killing. It is a play of justice that is written in blood. Nobody in the crowd knew what was really going on, so they stoned Naboth to death. The land was given to Ahab as a gift after it was taken back from its original owner. Jezebel wasn't just mean, she changed the rules so that violence was acceptable. The throne was stained with the blood of innocent people, and the cancer of power destroyed every moral fiber. This plan showed that the monarchs had no morals. It wasn't just image worship at the shrines, it was worship of the ego, greed, and a never-ending need to be in charge. Jezebel had become a sign of how institutions could be wrong. Even though everything was going wrong, Ahab took the land without question, without sadness, and without seeming to feel guilty. But God saw. As Ahab walked toward the field to claim it for himself, he ran into the prophet Elijah, who did not fear him. He didn't come with a sword. Instead, he spoke harsh words that cut through steel. In the place where the dogs licked the blood of Naboth, they will also lick your blood. The Lord had sent him with a word that could not be ignored. The line did not end with Ahab, though. His house, his family, and especially Jezebel were all judged. God said that his body would not be buried, and that dogs would eat it by the wall of Jezreel. Not only did the curse hurt him physically, it also showed how badly his acts had hurt people and disrespected God. When Ahab heard those words, he didn't get very angry. He did not say that Elijah should be killed. Instead, he was struck with a fear he hadn't expected. In tears, he gave up. In a sad mood, he tore off his royal clothes, put on sackcloth, fasted, and walked around. He felt afraid of the God of Israel for the first time in years. This unexpected answer made the Lord himself say something. God told Elijah to tell Ahab that the end of the world would not happen in his lifetime, but in the lifetime of his son. Even though the bad thing had already happened, the king's short apology put off the worst of it for a little while. Even when bad things happened, grace was shown. But Jezebel did not bow down. While Ahab showed some moral fiber, she stayed cold and resolute, protected by her pride. Nobody said sorry or did anything to show they were sorry. She thought that Naboth's death was just another political win. She wasn't afraid of Elijah, the prophets, or Yahweh's anger. She was sure that she was in charge. The prophet's words did not get lost in the wind, though. They started to reverberate through the royal halls. The throne, which was based on unfairness, could not last, so it had to fall. Ahab's bloody rule was doomed to fail. And Jezebel's name, which is written among the worst people in the Old Testament, became a warning to people who would come after. The story of this farm, which seemed easy at first, showed how a corrupt system works. A cold woman who manipulated, a king who sold himself on a whim, leaders who bent down for ease of use, and people who did what they were told without question. All of this in front of a God who knew everything and was still ready to listen when people wanted to change their minds. As the story of Naboth shows, formal idolatry isn't the only thing that puts people off. Idolatry of power, injustice, and disregard for other people's lives are also very bad. Even though Jezebel seemed to be in charge, she was actually making things worse for herself. Her story is more than just an old story. It's a warning for today. When power is total, it's no longer government. It's death. The power of Ahab's house did not end when he died. While the king was still alive, the bad effects of his relationship with Jezebel were still weakening Israel's faith. God was merciful and put off punishing Ahab's family fully until after he died. This was because the king briefly changed his mind. But God's mercy wasn't enough to stop Jezebel from doing bad things. The grieving queen kept ruling with all her might. She didn't back down. Instead, she strengthened the bases of worship and made it harder for anyone to call on the name of the Lord. People looked for prophets. Altars were broken, and the worship of Baal grew stronger and more organized, driven by both political power and the fear it spread across the kingdom. Obadiah was one of the brave few who tried to stand up to the enemy. He was a servant who loved the Lord Israel, and even though he worked as an official in the palace, he hid 100 preachers in caves and fed them bread and water. This quiet bravery saved lives and kept hope alive when things looked bad. At the same time, the queen's anger was mostly directed at Elijah, the prophet who had challenged the priests of Baal on Mount Carmel. After the clear proof of God's power, when fire came down from heaven and burned the sacrifice in front of the people, Elijah put the preachers of Baal to death. This action made sure that Jezebel would kill him. She was so mad that she swore in a day she would do to him what he did to her prophets. The danger was clear, known to everyone, and scary. Elijah ran away. He went out into the desert. He begged to die because he was tired, scared, and in a lot of pain. It made him feel like he was the only honest person left in a crooked land. He flew to Horeb, which is known as the Mount of God. There, he met a gentle breeze instead of thunder. There, the Lord refreshed him, gave him a new job, and told him about the coming of new kings and prophets, such as Elisha as his heir and Jehu as the one who would bring justice to Ahab's house. Time went by. In a fight with the Syrians, Ahab died, and his son Joram took the throne. Even though her husband wasn't there, Jezebel stayed strong in the house. She stayed powerful because she was smart about politics and had a dark charm. She ruled with her son and kept the worship of Baal going. No longer was her shape just royal. It was a sign. She stood for the union of power and disbelief, or between authority and immorality. But she hadn't forgotten about the prophecy that was hanging over her. People still believed Elijah's words after he left. Elisha, who took over after him, was in charge of starting to carry out the sentence. Elisha sent someone to appoint Jehu as king of Israel because God told him to. The appointment wasn't just about politics. It was a call to fight, to do the right thing. Jehu was in charge of the chariots. He had worked for Ahab and Joram, but now his heart was drawn to the bigger job. When he was blessed, oil was put on his head to seal his new identity. He would be the one who brought down Jezebel's house. It was easy to understand the order. He was to kill all of Ahab's children and grandchildren, getting rid of the source of worship. The rise of Jehu to power led to a violent revolt. He rushed and yelled his way to Jezreel, where Joram was getting better after being hurt in fight. As soon as Jehu showed up, there was panic. As the chariots came closer, the watchman noticed something strange. The way he drives is like Jehu's. He drives crazy. The fight between Joram and Jehu didn't last long. The king turned to run away when he realized he had been lied to, but it was too late. When Jehu shot his arrow, it went right through Joram's heart. His body was thrown into Naboth's field, which was where Ahab's house's unfairness began. Piece by piece, the forecast was starting to come true. Jezebel stayed. She didn't lose her pride even when people were against her. Even though she knew the end was coming, she decided to face it her way. It was against the new king for her to paint her eyes and put flowers on her head and look out the window. She didn't feel sorry for what she did. She felt disgusted. She made fun of Jehu by calling him a killer and an encroacher. But the end was near for her kingdom of fear. The eunuchs who were next to her were told by Jehu, "Who is with me?" Some people bowed and then threw Jezebel out the window right away. Her body fell and was crushed by the horses' hooves. After she died, they tried to bury her but only found her head, feet, and hands. The rest was eaten by the dogs, just like Elijah said. There was no more to say. It was the end of an age of worship, manipulation, and spiritual distortion, not just the fall of the queen. Jezebel's death ended a loop, but it also made people think about something that will always be true. Power without justice leads to destruction. And even the strongest thrones fall apart in the face of the word that never fails. Jehu's progress through the land of Israel wasn't just a military operation. It was also the exact fulfillment of every prophecy that had been spoken years before. No longer did the throne belong to those who stood on the blood of innocent people. After being invincible in the halls of power for a long time, Jezebel finally felt the weight of her inevitable judgment. The sounds of the past seemed to bounce off the palace walls as Jehu walked up to Jezreel. Jezebel watched the new king come down from above. That she painted her face, adorned her head, and stood defiantly wasn't just for show. It was her last act of control, an attempt to keep her image intact until the very end. But her irony showed how much she didn't like Jehu. She called him Zimri, which means the usurper who killed his master and ruled for a few days. It was an attack that had historical weight and could have killed someone. Not even fear could stop Jehu. His answer, on the other hand, was blunt and straight. "Whoever is with me, throw her down," he told the house staff. The eunuchs did what they were told right away. Jezebel's body fell out of the window, hit the ground, and was crushed by the wheels of chariots that were going by. It was a horrible scene, just like when Naboth was killed in the same place. Blood was all over the wall and the horses. There was no doubt that the two events were linked. The queen who took the field through unfair means was brought down on the same field where it had been taken. Jezebel's death wasn't just a punishment. It was the final word on a sentence that had been set in stone for a long time. It was painfully true what Elijah said would happen. This is a reminder that God does not forget and that every act of cruelty leads to a harvest. Jezebel was still remembered by the Israelites even after she died. Her name stuck around for a long time and came to mean worship, trickery, and spiritual decline. In the book of Revelation, written many years later, Jesus himself talks about a woman named Jezebel who got into the church of Thyatira and influenced the faithful by teaching them false things and doing bad things. The person from history had become a type, something real that shows what happens when power separates itself from truth. However, Jezebel's fall did not end a line of bad behavior. The evil of worshipping Baal and making bad political deals kept spreading through Judah. Athaliah, daughter of Jezebel and Ahab, married Jehoram, king of Judah. She brought the same bad things to Judah that her mother had brought to Israel. Athaliah not only kept up pagan practices, but she was also even more eager to keep her power. After Jehoram died, their son Ahaziah took over as king. He was only 22 years old, but that didn't stop him from making the same mistakes his predecessors had made. He ruled for a short time, but did a lot of bad things because he followed Athaliah's advice. Because his relationship with the Ahab family was so strong, he chose to go to Jezreel to see his uncle Jehoram. He had no idea that this trip would be the last one of his life. Jehu was already in the middle of his effort to clean up the kingdom, and he saw in that young king the continuing of a line that needed to be broken. Without thinking, he gave the order to kill him. Ahaziah was hurt while trying to escape and died near Megiddo. His body was taken to Jerusalem and buried with honor because he was a son of David. Still, the prophet's advice stayed the same. There should be no more ties to the house of Ahab. The death of Ahaziah set off a new wave of fear. When Athaliah heard that her son had died, she made a terrible choice. To keep her power, she ordered the deaths of all the royal heirs of Judah, even her own grandkids, to protect the throne. It was a killing like no other, and the house became a bloodbath. But one child got away. At the age of only 6 months, Joash was saved by Ahaziah's sister Jehosheba. He was then hidden in the temple for 6 years by the high priest Jehoiada. During that time, Athaliah ruled with a hard hand, forcing people to do what she said and getting even more people involved in pagan churches. Athaliah took what Jezebel had started and made it worse with her cruelty and bravado. The link between the two queens is clear and can't be denied. Both used the throne to rule over people spiritually and politically. Both of them disregarded God's rules. Both of them fought with the prophets and caused spiritual collapse in their countries. Athaliah would be the queen of evil in Judah if Jezebel was the queen of evil in Israel. However, God's plan did not fail. Even though they were hidden, the seeds of hope stayed alive. The royal blood from the promise made with David was still beating in little Joash, who was safe in the temple. The lack of noise in the hallways didn't mean there was no hope. It was just a sign that the time had come to make things right. At the same time, Jehu kept doing his job as the one who carried out God's punishment. People would remember him as the arm that cut off the source of the evil that Ahab and Jezebel started. Even though he made mistakes in his own story, he too would become an idolater. The beginning of it was a turning point. God's justice always comes, even if it seems slow to people. Ahaziah's killing was more than just getting rid of a weak and bad king. It was a turning point. The obvious ties between Judah and the house of Ahab were cut off. Each death that Jehu caused was part of a bigger plan. He did it not only because he was ambitious, but also because he was sure he was following a prophetic order. What Elijah had sternly told them and what Elisha had confirmed was now being done without any doubt. The death of Ahaziah had a direct effect on Athaliah's family. But Athaliah didn't give in or cry. Instead, she reacted with the same cruel spirit that marked her mother's rule. When she took the throne of Judah, she ordered the death of all royal offspring to make sure that no one else would claim power. Even the kids were not safe. There was a lot of blood in the middle of the holy city. Even so, one quiet act of love and bravery stood out in the chaos. She put her whole life at risk to save her nephew Joash. She was the daughter of Jehoram and the sister of Ahaziah. She saved the baby boy and hid him in the house of the Lord while she was married to the high priest Jehoiada. The true heir to David's throne was hidden for 6 long years and was protected by God, while Athaliah controlled Judah with an iron hand. She didn't run things from the background like her mother Jezebel did. She was the queen's public face. During her rule, Israel's customs were destroyed in a planned way, and people were mistreated and worshipped false gods. She publicly encouraged people to serve Baal by rebuilding altars and promoting religious practices that were very different from the rules set by the covenant her ancestors made with their God. The worship of Baal was a complicated system based on gods of war, storms, and fertility that came from Phoenician society. Sacrifices, traditional dances, and repeated prayers in front of carved platforms were all part of this cult's rituals. It was a faith that looked great, but was emotionally bad. And the fact that it was in Judah showed how far the people had gone from the truth that Moses had taught them in the desert. This worship of idols was not just religious, it was also political. By letting people worship Baal, Athaliah showed that she was separate from the Davidic lineage and rejected that Yahweh was in charge of Judah in public. She changed not only gods, but also names, allegiances. And with that, she threw the country into a crisis that included religious betrayal, governmental instability, and social abuse. But the Lord did not leave his people. This young Joash learned how to be a good leader in the temple where the light of truth still burned. The priest not only kept him safe, but also taught him, shaped his character, and got him ready for when hope would come back. It was almost time for justice, and the temple would be the place where things would turn around. At the same time, Athaliah was queen, but she had no idea that the royal family was still living and hiding in her own land. Fear, deceit, and worship of idols kept her rule going. She walked through the royal halls, sure that she had beaten all of her enemies. But she did not own the chair she was sitting on. David had promised that it would always be his throne, and God's word always comes true. It took 6 years to wait. The time came in the 7th year. Jehoiada carefully planned how to bring back the rightful king. He called for the leaders, the Levites, and the heads of houses who were loyal. He planned how to divide the forces strategically and put armed guards in key spots around the temple. Everything was ready, and Joash, who was only 7 years old, was brought before the people. He was anointed with holy oil and crowned king with horns, shouts, and cheers. There was a lot of party noise in the house. Athena heard the noise and ran to the temple, where she saw something she had never seen before, a living child with a crown, surrounded by priests and people. She was so upset that she tore her clothes and yelled, "Treason! Treason!" But her voice couldn't be heard. So that her blood wouldn't pollute the holy place, Joiada told them to take her out of the temple and kill her there. This was how Athaliah's rule ended, with the same violence that started it. And once more, right one out over wrong. Like the story of Jezebel, the story of Athaliah is not just about a bad person. It's also a warning. It shows how quickly a partnership gone wrong can hurt not only people, but also whole countries. Athaliah came from a family of bad people, but the choices she made sealed her fate. She might have been able to stop it. She could have gone to the real God, but she did the same bad things her mother did and fell with the same weight. However, the fact that Joash was saved shows that the Lord keeps his promises. God saved some people even when it looked like everything was lost and evil was in charge. When hope is based on things that will last forever, it doesn't die. When the throne was given back to Joash, Judah could start over. The Lord's worship started up again. The shrines of Baal were destroyed, and slowly order came back. The story that started with murder and betrayal was now about getting back together and being loyal. This is how the promise between God and his people grew again in the ruins of worship. When Athaliah was in charge of Judah, spiritual darkness spread like a quiet disease. People stole from and messed up the house of the Lord, which used to be a place of prayer and hope. The holy relics that showed the promise between God and his people were taken away and used in pagan ceremonies to honor Baal. What was meant to be a place of light was turned into a crime scene, but God's word was still alive even though things were dark. Since Adam's time, God has said that the person who would crush the head of the snake would come from the woman's seed. Until it reached the house of David, this divine bloodline went through many generations of wars, betrayals, and moral crises. Now that the species was in danger of going extinct, hope was hidden in the chapel. The only thing that kept the spark alive in all the chaos was Joash, who was the last true heir. In a strange way, Athaliah's lack of knowledge about Joash's life was what kept the line of promise alive. She ruled with cruel hands and thought she had killed all the royal children and grandchildren, but God was working behind the scenes through obedient slaves. The high priest Jehoiada and his wife Josheba had kept the boy safe for 6 years. They not only kept him safe, but they also got him ready. Every lesson, prayer, and night of silence led to the day when Judah could breathe again with hope. In the 7th year, Jehoiada chose that it was time. He got the Levites, trusted men and temple guards together to make a quiet front. The plan was dangerous, but God told them what to do. Joash was brought before the people on a serious Sabbath. There, in the same spot where Athaliah had looked down on the faith, a ritual full of meaning took place. The boy was sprinkled with holy oil and named King of Judah in front of everyone. The naming of Joash was more than just a political act. It was like a spiritual birth. The people in the crowd cheered when they saw the heir to the promise standing there with priests, music, and honors. They all yelled, "Long live the king!" Not only did they feel better about politics, but they also knew that this was an act of making peace with the God of their ancestors. It took Joiada a long time to put the crown on the boy's head because she was so scared. But first, he gave him a paper with the law of Moses written on it. It was a very important symbolic act because it meant that the young king would not be controlled by his own will, but by the orders of the Most High. The country needed more than just leadership. It also needed biblical guidance. Making the vow again was what made this time different from all the others. It was the start of a new era and a return to true faith. There was a lot of happiness in the temple, which was something people hadn't done in a long time. The area that worship had made silent was now filled with tears, songs, and praise. Justice was brought back to the throne, and the Lord's presence was once again seen as the most important thing. But the party did something else. It ended Athaliah for good. The queen could hear the party noise. She was angry and confused, so she ran to the temple to find out what was making everyone so happy. As soon as she got there and saw the crown boy surrounded by guards and people, she knew the throne was no longer hers. She ripped her clothes and yelled, "Treason! Treason!" because she was so scared. However, it wasn't treason, it was just. Jehoiada told them to take her out of the temple right away. The guards did what they were told, and Athaliah was taken to the front of the house and put to death there. Her fall was just as sudden as her rise. The people who stood up for the promise killed the woman who tried to end the royal line. After she died, Judah could finally take a deep breath. The shrines were torn down, the worship of Baal stopped, and the pagan priests were killed. It was the end of a time of violence and evil, but it was more than that. It was the start of a new spiritual and political cycle. Even though he was still very young, Joash became king with the help of Jehoiada, who taught him to fear the Lord. The temple was fixed up, the law was taught once more, and fairness started to be done again. It was a time when not only buildings and walls were being rebuilt, but also people's faith. This important moment shows something bigger: God's trustworthiness in the midst of chaos in the world. He stays true to his word, even when it seems like everything is lost and evil rules. Joash, who has been hiding for 6 years, stands for the truth that the light will never go out fully. The light may dim, but if the Holy Hand keeps it going, it will never go out. That's why Judah was saved not by swords or large forces, but by bravery, faith, and following the rules. Joash's rule wasn't just a return to David's throne, it was also a reminder that the promise of the Messiah was still alive and safe in the hands of the one who keeps his word to be fulfilled. Athaliah rushed in when she heard the roar of cries filling the temple. She felt heavy with fear that she was losing control of something. She couldn't believe that anyone from the royal family could still be alive. As she walked into the temple, she didn't have the power of a queen. Instead, she felt like the ground was giving way under her feet. Athaliah knew her kingdom of blood was in danger when she saw Joash standing in front of the altar with a crown on his head and priests and guards all around him. She yelled, "Treason! Treason!" out of sheer despair. But her words didn't fill the air. They were like the last gasp of a tyrannical regime that was falling apart. No one thought they were a real attraction. People didn't see her as a boss anymore. They saw her as a memory. She was no longer able to use her power. The people thought that God would punish those who were unfair. Not so with Athaliah. She was known as the one who killed even her own grandkids out of a desire for power. People across the country already felt guilty about what she did, so their cries were not heard. The end of a dark age was seen in the temple, which was a place of prayer and dedication. The wise and strong priest Jehoiada told the guards to take Athaliah out of the temple right away, so that the blood of the cruel queen would not pollute the holy place. She was led by guards to the horse gate, which was a sign of how military power kept the kingdom going. Athaliah died there, where many choices had been made in secret. For 6 long years, she had ruled over Judah with a tight grip. When she died, that ended. It turned out to be more than just a killing. It was putting things back in order. The rightful heirs to the throne of the house of David were now sitting on it. It took both the sword and the loyalty of a people who had been waiting a long time for a new start to bring justice back. In a harsh way, Athaliah's story shows us that ruling for personal gain and manipulation has a price. That's right. She lost because she was mean and because she had lost all sense of God's mission. She didn't listen to what God said, cut ties with family, and replaced hope with fear. Joash, on the other hand, who was still a boy, stood for rebirth. When he took the throne, it wasn't just a new leader, it was also the start of a new bond between God and Judah. He stood for the idea that God keeps his plan even when everything seems lost. Jehoiada was Joash's teacher at the start of his rule. In the early years, the boy king showed that he was trustworthy by working to fix up the temple, uphold justice, and teach the people the ways of the law. The fall of Athaliah made Judah feel better, but in another part of the Promised Land, a new power struggle was taking place. Galilee to the north saw a person who looked a lot like Athaliah, but was from a different time. Herodias was her name, and she was Herod's determined wife, a smart woman, and a powerful figure behind the scenes. Herodias is different from other women in the Bible stories because she doesn't act religiously or compassionately. Her story is marked by selling family ties for power, controlling her daughter, and having a direct hand in the death of John the Baptist, which is one of the most horrible events in the New Testament. Herod Philip was Herodias' first husband, but she left him to marry Herod Antipas, who was her first husband's brother. Jewish law said that this marriage was not legal and was morally wrong, so John the Baptist spoke out against it. His strong, confident voice made Herodias very angry, and she grew to hate him. John was more than just an offense to Herodias. She saw him as a threat to her reputation. She also thought Elijah was an enemy, just like Jezebel did. Herodias also wanted to stop John for good. The chance came up at a party where Herod saw Salome, Herodias' daughter, dancing in front of him. As a result, the king offered to give her anything she asked for. With the help of her mother, Salome asked for a dish with the head of John the Baptist on it. The request was duly met. The prophet was killed, and his head was shown off as a sign of revenge. Like other strong women in the Old Testament, Herodias used her power to get rid of people who were trying to hurt her. The holy was once again hushed by politics, the truth by desire, and justice by anger. There is no way around the comparison between Athaliah and Herodias. Both worked behind the scenes and made choices that altered the course of events. Both ruined holy things because they wanted to be in charge. Both stories are warnings about what can happen when the heart is led by passion instead of obedience. But just like God kept Joash living in Judah, the word of the kingdom lived on during the time of Herodias. Even though John had died, Jesus kept preaching. There was no end to the light, and God's promise will stand. Even if people like Herodias and Athaliah rise up, Herodias is like a late shadow of the Old Testament's dark queens. Along the pages of the New Testament, she made quiet plans and quick choices that will never be forgotten in the history of faith. Herod Antipas, who was king of Galilee and Perea, had a relationship with her. Together, they wrote a sad chapter in the life of John the Baptist, the prophet whose voice cried out in the desert to prepare the way for the Messiah. Herod Philip, the son of Herod the Great, was Herodias' first husband, but she left him to marry Antipas, his brother. The Bible clearly said that such a union was wrong. This kind of marriage was against Mosaic law, especially since Philip was still living. The Jewish people, and especially the prophets, saw this connection as adultery, shameful, and against the Torah. Nobody spoke until John the Baptist spoke up. He was known for being brave and telling the truth. He told the couple in public that their union was illegal and used words that were as sharp as a sword. He wasn't afraid of Herod's power or Herodias' name. His job was clear, to tell the people and their leaders to turn away from their sins. But being loyal would cost him a lot. Herodias didn't just think John was being rude about religion when he spoke. They were clear threats to her job. She knew that her power was weak because it was based on a bad marriage that wasn't liked by many people. John's appearance, along with his loud voice and rising power among the people, made everything more dangerous. That's why Herodias wanted him to be quiet. Herod fought back at first. Even though he was wicked, he could tell there was something about John that made him uncomfortable. According to the gospel, Herod was afraid of the prophet because he thought he was a good and holy person. Even though he had him in jail, he wasn't brave enough to kill him. He locked him up and shielded him in some ways, like trying to hold a fire in place without putting it out. But Herodias was not happy with being locked up. In any case, she did not want John to be living. Her goal was to get rid of him completely. She was calmly waiting for the right chance to come along. That chance came up when Herod's birthday party was going on. The party, which was full of officials, lords, and troops, was a great place to make a big move. Herodias' daughter Salome came on stage and danced in a way that made everyone feel magical. The attitude of being too much, drunk and vain, set the stage for the tragic result. Herod was so excited and interested in the young woman that he made a dangerous promise in front of everyone. He would give her anything she asked for, even half of his kingdom. Salome didn't think twice because her mother told her to. She asked Herod for something cold and thought out. She wanted John the Baptist's head on a box. It wasn't a figure of speech or a metaphor. It was the last part of a plan that Herodias made to get back at him. She used her daughter as a weapon. When the king heard the request, he was very upset. He knew that his rushed promise was wrong. However, he did not have the guts to back down because of the guests and his own words. He told them to kill the prophet, and soon after, John's head was brought into the hall and given to the young woman. She then gave it to her mother. This violent act changed the story of the New Testament in a big way. John the Baptist was the forerunner of the Messiah. He died not because of enemy swords or battles, but because of a brave woman's plotting in the palace and an oath she took without thinking it through. For a short time, cunning won over purity and ego over truth. Herodias may have thought she had won after she was able to silence John, but her win didn't last long. Some people will always remember John's name, but Herodias will always be remembered as a woman who wanted power and made decisions that hurt not only a good man, but also her own home. After this event, Herod and Herodias stayed in power for a while, but that event always hung over them. Historical records say that Herod later had political problems and was sent to Gaul by the Roman ruler as punishment. Herodias went with him into exile, giving up the comforts of the court for a life of shame and being alone. Like the story of Jezebel and Athaliah, the story of Herodias shows how dangerous it is to have a heart full of desire and ambition. They were smart, had power and had chances, but they decided to go down destructive roads. Among them, Herodias twisted feelings, used her daughter as a tool, and ignored the call to justice so that she could keep quiet. The holy story goes on, though. Even though these terrible things are happening, John's voice was drowned out, but it wasn't lost. His goal had been reached. In order to make way for the Messiah, who would face the cross with love instead of anger, he did what had to be done. Christ goes to the center of the story, giving both judgment and redemption, while Herodias fades away from the edges. When John the Baptist was beheaded, there was a heavy quiet. It wasn't just the sound of a crime. Everyone there felt that weight of guilt. Herod's power and status were meant to be celebrated at a banquet, but it turned into a funeral with the head of a good man as the main course. The prophet, who was brave enough to speak out against kings, had his body taken away from him, but his word would live on. Herod felt the weight of the blood he had let be shed while dressed in his royal clothes. When Herodias got what she had so desperately asked for, she may have felt happy for a short time. She hoped for peace, but it never came. John's head was still when she looked at him, but she could still remember what he said. Instead, it made them permanent, sharp, and impossible to erase. People used to be very excited about Salome's dance, but now they remember it as the start of a tragedy. The hall's fake happiness was replaced by tight looks and an uneasy feeling that wouldn't go away. The house wasn't the same anymore. Herod split into two parts. On the outside, he was a strict leader, but on the inside, he was a troubled soul who couldn't change the choices he had made. The death of John the Baptist not only showed how morally weak a court was, but it also showed how human power and heavenly authority have always been at odds with each other. Herod had power over land, but not over people's minds. Even though Herodias had power over events, she couldn't stop John from speaking the truth. Salome, who was a player in a Machiavellian game, would always remember the picture she had given to her mother, the platter of payback. News of the killing spread quickly away from Herod's halls. John's students were so sad that they found his body and buried it with respect. But the hole he left behind was quickly filled by a flame even stronger, the belief that the truth does not die with the bearer. It comes back to life in the hearts of those who choose to carry it on. A lot of people who had heard John preach on the banks of the Jordan turned to the one he had talked about with even more faith, Jesus of Nazareth. Though the sound screaming out in the desert was no longer there, the eternal word was still walking among people. John had done his job, which was to clear the way. Now that he was dead, he was still doing what he had set out to do, inspiring, pushing, and stirring. Herod tried to keep up looks at the same time, but his name was already connected to a terrible crime. As the rumors spread, his appeal dropped. Some people said that John's ghost was following him around. Some people said he saw people in the shadows. Heard of a man who healed, taught with authority, and drew large groups all over Galilee. This made Herod suspicious. This is John, who has risen from the dead, he thought to himself. He had good reason to be afraid. Herod knew that by killing a prophet, he had not stopped the truth from spreading, but only sped it up. This was Jesus' turn to be the star, and the seeds that John had planted grew strong with him. Herod was doomed to decay and being alone. He was finally sent away by Rome, kicked out of the empire's good graces, with only Herodias with him. They were both driven by ambition, but they didn't know the truth about each other. They died far from the castles they had so badly wanted. In their last days, no crown shone. There was no dance to honor their memories, but John's fame has lived on for hundreds of years. In honor of him, Jesus said, "Among those born of women, there has not come up anyone greater than John the Baptist." He didn't write books, do wonders, or build buildings, but he was honest in his life, brave in his speech, and respectful in his death. The story of John, Herod, and Herodias has always been a metaphor for the fight between what is right and what is easy, or between holiness and power. It's a mirror for every age that has to decide whether to stay quiet out of fear or speak out of loyalty. While John's blood was on the floor of a jail, it also stained history with the message that preachers may die, but their words live on forever. Everyone thought John lost. A spiteful woman, a weak king, and a hasty promise all beat him. But God saw him as the winner. He finished what he set out to do. He made the way clear for the Lamb. Indeed, his death did not end his impact. Instead, it sparked a change. His story is still told today, one man against an unfair system, a voice that wouldn't give up even when threatened or praised, a good example of steadfast honesty. John shows us that real power doesn't come from being in charge, but from telling the truth, even if it costs everything. As this journey comes to a close through the dark sides of desire and worship, the fall of queens, and the silence of prophets, we are asked to think about our own paths. Who is the voice we're hearing? We want to find whose seat this is. What are we willing to give up for something that will last forever? May the spirit of John the Baptist, who was brave, honest, and loyal to the end, continue to lead us. This is because a man's head may be cut off, but his truth lives on, alive, burning, and eternal. If this story moved you, if it moved your heart, if it made you think about roads, choices, and the effects of quiet choices, please like this video and subscribe to our channel to get more stories that build our faith. The story of John, Herod, and Herodias isn't just about the past. It's still relevant to our lives today. Feel free to keep this message with you. Thank you for following us to the end of this incredible story. See you in the next video. May God be with you always. Amen.